Out on the edge of the prairie, in a time when law was nothing but a word whispered over campfires, a story unfolded that folks still whisper about today. A farmer's daughter, young, stubborn, and unafraid of hard work, thought her quiet life was safe from the chaos that ruled the frontier. But safety don't last long in a land where guns speak louder than prayers. One stormy night, a wounded outlaw stumbled into her barn. His eyes were wild, his hands stained with blood, and with a pistol aimed steady at her heart, he gave her a choice no woman should ever hear. You'll warm my bed, or dig your grave. What followed was a battle of fear and fire, of loyalty and betrayal, of love found in the darkest corner of the West. And it all began with a single knock of thunder. Like this story so far? If it's pulling at something in your chest, or if you just love a good Wild West mystery, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss the next chapter. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories ride. Now, back to the tale. It was Kansas, 1874. The prairie stretched wide and endless, a flat ocean of grass that whispered under the wind. Nights out here were quiet, so still you could hear your own heartbeat if you listened close. That evening, though, the sky was restless. Clouds moved heavy and low, and thunder rolled far across the plains, slow and steady like war drums. Clara Whitfield stood at the doorway of the farmhouse, her apron dusted with flour, her hands raw from kneading bread. She'd lived on this land her whole life, 20 years carved out of hard soil and harder work. Her father was gone on a cattle drive, and the place had been left in her care. Crops, animals, and the creaking wooden bones of the house. She told herself she wasn't afraid of being alone, though the way the wind pushed against the shutters tonight made her doubt it. She had just banked the fire in the hearth when the horses in the barn gave a sharp, restless cry. Not the sound they made for coyotes or thunder, but the sound that meant a stranger was near. Clara froze. Out here, a knock at your door after dark could mean anything. Merchants, wanderers, soldiers, or worse. She grabbed the shotgun her father left propped by the wall, the wood worn smooth from years of use. The sound of the barn door creaking wide reached her ears. Her heart thumped hard, her palms slick against the gun stock. The lantern on the table flickered as the wind shoved at the house. Clara stepped off the porch into the night air, the scent of rain already thick. She moved slow, boots crunching against dirt and straw as she approached the barn. The moment she pushed the door open, she saw him. A man slumped against the stall gate, one hand clamped over his ribs, the other holding a pistol that gleamed even in the dim light. His coat was torn and heavy with dust, his hat shoved low over his brow. Blood darkened his shirt, and yet his eyes were sharp, burning through the shadows like embers. "Put that gun down," he rasped, pointing his pistol toward her. Clara's grip tightened on the shotgun. Her breath caught, but her voice didn't shake. "This is my land. You put yours down." The man let out a bitter laugh, then coughed, spitting dark red into the straw. "Don't think you understand, girl. I'm not a skin. You'll do as I say." He raised the pistol higher, his hand trembling from weakness but steady enough to make her heart pound. "Who are you?" Clara asked. He shifted, trying to straighten. His shadow looked too tall, too dangerous for the low barn light. "Name's Jesse Kane. Outlaw, if you believe the posters. Murderer, if you believe the law." His lip curled in a smirk that didn't hide the pain dragging at his face. "But tonight, I'm the man standing between you and a grave you don't want." Clara's chest tightened. She knew the name. Everyone did. Jesse Kane, the gunslinger with a bounty that stretched high as the church steeple. They said he left trails of blood in every town he touched. They said no man who crossed him lived to tell it. Her mind raced. She could shoot him now, end it before trouble settled deeper into her life. But her finger hovered useless on the trigger. The sight of his blood, the way he leaned like death, was already pulling him under. It stilled her. "Why here?" she demanded, her voice harder than she felt. "Because I was dying on your land," Jesse said. He coughed again, his face twisting in agony. Then he steadied himself, those eyes narrowing. "And because I need you." Clara's stomach turned. He pushed off the stall, wavering, gun still aimed. He stepped closer, his boots dragging against straw, his presence filling the space until she felt cornered. "You'll patch me up," he said, his voice dropping to something dark and deliberate. "You'll keep me hid here, feed me, help me stand again. And if you don't..." He pressed the barrel of his pistol forward until it nearly touched her temple. "You'll warm my bed, or dig your grave." The words sent ice crawling through Clara's veins. Her breath came sharp, ragged, her mind screaming to move, to fight. But she didn't flinch. She stared straight at him, her chest rising with fury. "You kill me," she whispered, "and you bleed to death in my barn." For a long moment, neither moved. The storm outside rumbled like it was waiting for the first shot. Then Jesse's mouth twisted into the faintest grin, a wolf cornered but still proud. He lowered the gun, just enough to ease the edge. "You've got fire," he said. "Maybe that's why I walked into this place." Clara exhaled, not in relief but in raw defiance. She should have run. She should have screamed. But something in the way his body shook, the blood dripping between his fingers, stopped her. He was dangerous, yes, a threat, without question, but he was also a man on the edge of the grave. "Sit down," she snapped, "before you fall down." To her surprise, Jesse did. He slid onto a wooden crate, breathing hard, his hand pressed to his ribs. The gun stayed loose in his lap, always visible, always reminding her who held control. Clara lit a lantern and set it between them. The light showed his face clearer now, rough features, sun-scorched skin, a jaw set in stubbornness. His eyes, though, were what caught her. They weren't wild the way she expected. They were sharp, calculating, and behind them lingered something she hadn't expected: weariness. She fetched water and a rag from the house, her mind spinning with every step. Each sound from the storm outside made her jump, but not as much as the thought of the man waiting in her barn. When she returned, Jesse was slumped forward, but the gun still rested in his hand. He watched her as she knelt, her fingers trembling while she pressed the cloth to his wound. He hissed through his teeth, "Careful, girl. You aiming to kill me slow? You've already done that to yourself," she muttered. He let out a hoarse chuckle. "Mouth like yours might just be the death of me." She ignored him, focusing on the blood. His skin burned under her touch, sweat dripping down his temple. For a moment, the outlaw wasn't a monster or a shadow in wanted posters. He was just a man in pain. But then his hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to make her gasp. His eyes burned into hers, voice rough but deadly certain. "Don't forget, you keep me alive, or you're the one who won't see sunrise." Clara yanked her hand free, fury flashing. "I should have left you for the wolves." For the first time, Jesse's grin faltered. His eyes softened, just a fraction, as if the thought of her leaving him truly struck fear. But the moment passed, his walls slamming back into place. The storm outside broke open, rain hammering the roof, wind howling through the cracks. The sound swallowed the silence between them. Clara sat back, her heart hammering, staring at the man fate had thrown into her world. She didn't know if she'd just saved his life or invited death straight into her home. And Jesse Kane, outlaw of the frontier, leaned back with his pistol in hand, whispering through the thunder, "This storm's just the beginning." The storm raged through the night, lashing the farmhouse with sheets of rain that rattled the windows and shook the shutters. Clara sat at the wooden table with her hands folded tight, trying to still the tremor in her fingers. The outlaw lay stretched on the bench opposite her, hat tipped low over his eyes, one hand resting on the pistol at his hip like it was part of him. He hadn't spoken much since she bandaged his wound. Just short orders: water, food, firewood, and she obeyed because the muzzle of his gun never strayed far from her. The air inside the small kitchen was heavy, the scent of blood mingling with smoke from the fire. She hated that her own home felt like a cage, each corner claimed by his presence. But what chilled her most wasn't the weapon. It was the way he watched her when she thought he slept. Eyes half shut, but always tracking, measuring. A predator too wounded to strike, yet still too dangerous to turn her back on. Clara rose quietly, intending to fetch more water. Jesse's voice cut through the air before she reached the door. "Don't try it." Her shoulders stiffened. "Try what? You thought about running." His tone was calm, not accusing, like he was stating a fact of nature. But you won't. Not yet. She turned, meeting his gaze square. And what makes you so sure? Because you ain't stupid. You step out that door, you leave me in here alone. I start wondering if you're coming back with the sheriff. And wondering makes me twitchy. He patted the pistol with one finger. Twitchy gets folks killed. Her chest tightened, anger rising hot in her throat. So you mean to keep me prisoner in my own house? He smirked, though his face was pale with pain. Call it what you like. You keep me alive, I keep breath in your lungs. Fair trade. Clara's jaw clenched. She wanted to scream, to slam the door, to break every bit of his twisted calm. But she swallowed the fire inside her. Eat your stew before it gets cold, she muttered, sliding the bowl across the table. Jesse pushed himself up slowly, wincing as the motion pulled at his ribs. His hands were rough, knuckles scarred, nails black with dirt. Yet when he wrapped them around the spoon, his movements were steady, deliberate. He ate like a man who'd gone too long without food, but his eyes never left her. Clara sat across from him, the storm hammering around them. For the first time, she studied him without flinching. His face was rugged, yes, but not the mask of a monster she'd expected from the stories. Lines of weariness carved deep around his mouth, his eyes shadowed with more than exhaustion. He looked like a man carrying ghosts on his back, each one heavier than the last. Why'd you become what you are? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Jesse's spoon stilled midair. For a moment, silence pressed between them, broken only by thunder. Then he chuckled low. That's what you want to know? Not how many men I've killed. Not if I'll shoot you before sunrise. No, you're a skin about beginnings. Clara straightened, her voice firmer than she felt. Because no one's born a killer. Something made you this way. His gaze flicked to the fire, shadows dancing across his face. You want the truth, girl? Land. That's what made me. Land and the bastards who take it. He leaned back, every word rolling slow, like whiskey poured over a wound. My folks built a farm not so different from this one. 10 good years, then the railroad came through. Papers, ink, men in suits. Said our land was theirs by law. My pa fought. My ma begged. Suits didn't care. They sent men with torches. By the time I was done burying, and both, something in me snapped. His eyes found hers again, sharp as broken glass. I took to the gun, 'cause it's the only law this land listens to. Clara's throat tightened. The picture he painted was brutal, but it didn't erase the fear clawing at her ribs. She shook her head. So you decided if the world took from you, you'd take from everyone else. Jesse smirked again, but softer this time. You've got a sharp tongue. Dangerous thing. I'm not afraid of you, she lied. He studied her for a long moment, then set the spoon down and leaned forward, forearms braced on the table. You should be. The words hung heavy, and Clara's heart pounded against her chest. But she didn't look away. Lightning split the sky, casting the room in white for an instant. Then darkness swallowed it again. The storm was a beast clawing at the walls, and Clara felt trapped inside with one just as dangerous. Hours crawled by. She kept her distance, knitting by the fire while Jesse drifted between wakefulness and restless sleep. Every creak of the house made her flinch. Every shift of his weight reminded her that danger never truly slept. At one point, she rose to tend the fire, and Jesse stirred, pistol lifting even before his eyes fully opened. Clara froze, the poker clutched in her hand. You really can't rest without that thing in your grip? She asked bitterly. Not since the day I buried my ma, he muttered, lowering it again. Her anger faltered, replaced by something she didn't want to name. Pity had no place here. Yet as she watched him fight sleep like it was an enemy, she wondered if he even remembered what peace felt like. The night dragged until the storm finally weakened. Dawn seeped through the cracks of the shutters, pale and gray. Clara hadn't closed her eyes once. She moved quietly, setting dough to rise, when Jesse spoke from the bench. His voice was rough, tired but edged with iron. Don't fool yourself, girl. You're thinking once I can stand on my own 2 feet, you'll send me off to the gallows. Clara turned slowly. Maybe I am. He smiled faintly, though his face looked carved from stone. "Then let me teach you something. Men like me don't walk to the gallows. We run at it with guns blazing, and we take half the town with us. If you want me gone, best pray I leave alive." Her stomach twisted. His words weren't a threat. They were a promise carved out of the life he'd lived. The sun climbed higher, pale light spilling across the room. Clara knew the day had only begun, but already the weight of Jesse Kane's presence pressed down like iron chains. And deep inside, a question gnawed at her. Was she more afraid of him dying under her roof, or of him living long enough to change everything she thought she knew about fear? The next day carried the smell of damp earth, the storm having left its fingerprints across the land. Puddles pooled in the dirt outside, the grass bent under the weight of rain, and the air still held a heavy quiet, as though the sky was catching its breath. Inside the farmhouse, though, quiet wasn't peace. Quiet was a wire stretched too tight. Clara moved around the kitchen with her jaw set, scraping bacon grease into the skillet, trying to ignore the man watching her from the bench near the wall. Jesse Kane, propped against the wood with his pistol always within reach, looked like a storm himself. He hadn't left the room since last night, though his presence filled it so much she felt there wasn't space left for her own breath. He studied her with eyes half-lidded from pain but sharp as a hawk's. Clara could almost hear his thoughts prying at her, testing her for weakness. She set the plate down harder than she meant to, the sound cracking against the silence. "You always cook like you're fightin' the food?" Jesse asked, his voice low, a hint of amusement hiding under the gravel. She shot him a glare. "You don't like it. Don't eat it." He grinned faintly, then winced as he shifted his side. "Woman with fire. I'll give you that." She didn't answer. She placed the plate on the table, slid it toward him, then stepped back. The smell of fried eggs and bacon filled the room, and Jesse dug in without ceremony. He ate with the hunger of a man who hadn't seen steady meals in weeks. Clara leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching every move. After a few bites, Jesse paused, meeting her gaze. "You keep staring like that, I'll start thinking you're sweet on me." Her cheeks burned, though it was anger more than anything else. "I'm making sure you don't choke and give me one less problem to deal with." He laughed, the sound rough but genuine, and for a second it softened the hard edges of his face. That fleeting glimpse unsettled her more than his threats. When he finished, Clara reached for the plate, but as she stepped forward, Jesse caught her wrist. Not hard, not painful, but firm enough that her breath hitched. She tried to yank free, but his grip tightened, his eyes locked onto hers. "You ever look at someone and know they carry ghosts heavier than bullets?" he asked. His tone wasn't mocking this time. It was quiet, serious. Clara froze. His question, unexpected and raw, cut through her defiance. Jesse released her hand slowly, his face unreadable. He leaned back, closing his eyes, the pistol still loose in his lap. "You don't know me, girl. Don't try to. But if you did, maybe you'd see I ain't just the devil these posters make me." Clara's heart pounded. She should have turned away. She should have hardened herself, reminded him and herself that he was her captor, nothing more. But her mind replayed the story he'd told last night. The farm burned, his parents gone, the law twisted against him. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself pity was a trap. And yet, something in his words lingered. Hours crept by. Jesse dozed off now and then, though never without the pistol in reach. Clara worked quietly, sewing near the fire, her ears attuned to every breath he drew. At one point, his sleep broke into a low murmur. His lips moved, whispering words too soft for her to catch. His face, usually carved from stone, twisted as though in pain not from his wound but from memory. She set her sewing down, listening. His hand jerked, his body tense. Then he whispered a name, Mary, before jolting awake with a sharp breath. The pistol came up instantly, eyes wild, searching. Clara jumped back, hands raised. "It's just me," she said quickly. Jesse blinked, the fury draining from his eyes, replaced by something darker. He lowered the gun, exhaling slow. His chest heaved, sweat glistening on his brow. "Nightmares?" Clara asked before she could stop herself. He gave a humorless smile. Ain't much difference between them and memories. She hesitated. Mary. Who was she? His eyes flicked up to hers. Sharp again, a warning in the glance. For a heartbeat she thought he'd lash out. But then his shoulders slumped. My sister, he muttered. Little thing. Hair the color of wheat in the sun. She was 9 when they burned the house. His jaw tightened, the words dragging out of him like stones. I couldn't save her. Clara's throat tightened. The hardness in his voice wasn't just anger. It was grief buried so deep it had turned into steel. You asked why I became what I am, he said, voice low. That's your answer. I swore no man would ever take from me again without paying, in blood. Clara's eyes burned, though she didn't let tears fall. She wanted to hate him, wanted to see him only as the outlaw who had trapped her. But hearing the story cracked something inside her. It was easier when he was only a monster, much harder when he was human. You still kill innocent people, she said softly, more to herself than him. Jesse's gaze met hers, unflinching. Innocent don't exist out here, girl. You'll learn that one day. The room grew heavy again. Clara turned back to her sewing, though her fingers shook too much to hold the needle steady. She hated that his words lingered, hated that his pain touched something in her she didn't want touched. As night approached again, Jesse pushed himself to his feet for the first time since entering her house. He staggered, catching himself on the table, but managed to stand. Clara leapt up instinctively, reaching to steady him, but he waved her off. I ain't dead yet, he muttered, jaw tight as he tested his legs. He limped to the window, peering out at the horizon. They'll be looking for me, he said, almost to himself. Posse'll be combing these fields by sundown tomorrow. Clara's stomach dropped. Then go, she snapped. Don't drag your trouble to my door. He turned, his expression unreadable. You think they'll care you never raised a hand to me? They find me here, they'll hang you for harboring, woman or not. The blood drained from Clara's face. He wasn't bluffing. Out here, law was whatever the men with badges decided it was. Her fists clenched. So I'm trapped either way, you or them. Jesse's lips curved faintly. Now you're understanding. She wanted to scream. She wanted to drive him out with the shotgun and take her chances. But her hands trembled, and her heart betrayed her. Something in his voice, his confession, his eyes, it tangled her rage with something else she didn't dare name. When darkness settled and the coyotes began their calls, Clara sat by the fire, her mind a storm louder than the one that had passed. Jesse lay back on the bench, staring at the ceiling, his pistol resting on his chest. For a long time neither spoke. Then, without looking at her, Jesse said, You've got a strong heart, girl. Stronger than most men I've met. Clara looked at him sharply. Don't you dare try to charm me. His grin was faint, weary. Ain't charm, just truth. She turned back to the fire, her cheeks burning, her hands twisting in her lap. And for the first time, she admitted to herself what she feared most. She wasn't just afraid of Jesse Kane killing her. She was afraid of the part of her that wanted to understand him. The sun dropped heavy behind the plains, painting the horizon in streaks of orange and blood red. The prairie was too still. Clara knew that silence, every creature holding its breath because something unnatural walked close. She stood at the window, fingers curled tight around the curtain edge, watching shadows stretch across the fields. Jesse sat at the table, pale but upright, his pistol never more than a heartbeat from his hand. He'd been restless all day, pacing the room like a caged wolf, testing his strength though his wound still pulled him down. His eyes kept drifting toward the horizon, as if he could smell the men hunting him. They'll be coming, he muttered. Clara glanced back, her stomach twisting. How many? Depends how bad they want me. Bounty like mine. His mouth curved, humorless. Could feed a man's family for years. The words made Clara's chest tighten. Somewhere out there, men were saddling horses, loading rifles, chasing blood money, and her farm sat right in their path. She turned sharply from the window. Then you should leave now, before they get here. Jesse leaned back, his gaze cutting through her. And leave you here alone? When they ride up and see fresh tracks, when they search the place, what do you think happens to you? Clara's jaw set. They'll know I didn't choose this, that you forced yourself in. He laughed, low and sharp. You think lawmen care about choice? They find me here, you swing with me. Harboring an outlaw, they call it. And it don't matter if you never touched a gun in your life. Her throat went dry. She wanted to argue, but the truth in his voice stole the fight from her. The prairie didn't forgive. Neither did the law. A horse's distant whinny shattered the stillness. Clara froze. Jesse's head snapped toward the sound, his body coiling like a spring. Light, he barked, gesturing at the lantern. Clara doused the flame in a rush, plunging the room into shadow. The only glow left was the fire's faint flicker. They waited. The seconds stretched like rope pulled taut. Then the crunch of hoofs came, slow and steady, drawing closer. Clara's breath hitched. She backed away from the window, her heart hammering. Jesse moved to the wall, pressing his shoulder against it. Pistol raised, every line of his body wired to strike. Two shadows crossed the yard. Men on horseback, rifles slung across their backs, scanning the house with predator patience. One swung down from his saddle, boots sinking into the mud. He stepped up onto the porch, each footfall loud as thunder in Clara's ears. Her chest heaved, fear burning her throat. Jesse caught her gaze and pressed a finger to his lips, his eyes hard as steel. A fist hammered against the door. Evening. Anyone home? Clara swallowed, every muscle locked. The knock came again, harder. Jesse moved close, whispering low, urgent. You open that door, you keep your voice steady. Don't let em in. You understand me? Her head shook before she even realized it. They'll know. He grabbed her chin, forcing her eyes to his. Steady, girl, or we're both dead. Her breath shuddered, but she nodded. Jesse let her go and slid into the shadows by the door. Pistol raised, hidden in the dark. Clara stepped forward, her hand trembling on the latch. The door creaked open a crack, lantern light from outside spilling over the bounty hunter's face. He was rough, unshaven, his eyes sharp with suspicion. Evening, he said again. Storm rolled us off course. Just looking for a dry roof. Maybe some water for the horses. Clara's voice stuck in her throat. She forced herself to speak. It's just me here. My pa's gone on a drive. We don't take to strangers. The man's eyes narrowed. He leaned, peering past her shoulder into the gloom. Funny. Thought I heard a man's voice. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. No one else here. She lied. You're mistaken. The second rider called from the yard, his voice gruff. Quit wasting time, Bill. Kane's tracks lead this way. He's here. Clara's blood ran cold. The man at the door smirked, hand drifting toward the rifle on his back. That's so, miss? Why don't we take a look around? Before Clara could answer, Jesse's voice cut through the darkness, low and lethal. That'd be your last mistake. The bounty hunter froze. His eyes darted toward the shadows where Jesse stepped into sight, pistol gleaming in his hand. Bill's smirk faltered. Well, I'll be damned. Jesse Kane, right where they said. He raised his voice toward the yard. He's inside. The second man spurred his horse, boots pounding against dirt. Jesse fired first. The shot cracked like lightning, glass shuddering in the window. The rider toppled from his saddle, hitting the mud with a heavy thud. Clara screamed, clapping her hands over her ears. Bill dove for cover, yanking his rifle up, but Jesse was faster. He grabbed Clara, shoving her aside, and fired again. The shot tore through the doorframe, splinters flying, missing Bill by inches. The bounty hunter staggered back, retreating off the porch, shouting curses as he scrambled for his horse. Jesse kicked the door shut, his chest heaving, sweat shining across his face. Get away from the window, he barked. Clara stumbled back, her heart slamming against her ribs. Outside, Bill mounted fast, spurring his horse hard into the night. The sound of hoofs thundered across the fields, fading into distance. Silence fell again, broken only by Clara's ragged breaths. She stared at Jesse, horror burning through her. You killed him. Jesse holstered his gun, his expression flat. Better him than me. Clara shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You brought this here. My home, My life. It's all ash now because of you. Jesse's gaze didn't soften. Wake up, girl. You think this prairie was safe before I walked in? The world's been talking from you since the day you were born. Only difference now is you see it clear. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to throw him out, wound or no wound. But her body trembled with the truth he carried. The world was cruel, and tonight had proven it. Jesse stepped closer, his shadow stretching across her. You saved me, Clara. You could have let me die in that barn. But you didn't. Maybe you don't want to admit it yet, but that choice chained you to me. And there's no going back. Her lips trembled, fury and fear and something nameless battling inside her. She turned away, choking on a sob, staring into the fire so he couldn't see her break. Behind her, Jesse's voice came quieter, almost weary. That man's death won't be the last. Not if you stand near me. The truth settled in her bones like frost. She wasn't just trapped anymore. She was marked. And outside, far across the dark prairie, more riders were coming. She could feel it. The wind howled all night, shaking the shutters like a warning drumbeat. Clara didn't sleep. She sat by the hearth, arms wrapped tight around her knees, staring into the flames until her eyes blurred. Every creak of the house made her flinch. Every groan of the wind sounded like hooves rolling across the dirt. Jesse was stretched out on the cot, his wounded side bound with fresh cloth. He hadn't spoken much since the shooting. His chest rose and fell steady, but Clara doubted he slept either. He was a man born with danger at his heels. Rest came only in snatches, like a thief grabbing bread. When dawn bled gray across the sky, Clara rose stiffly. She moved through the kitchen like a ghost, setting water to boil, hands trembling so bad she spilled half the bucket. You'll wear yourself hollow? Jesse's voice rasped behind her. She turned sharply. He sat up, pale but alert, dark eyes watching her with that steady weight that made her skin prickle. I'm fine, she snapped. No, you're scared. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. And you got every reason to be. That rider got away last night. By now, he's told others. They'll come in packs. Her heart lurched. And what do you plan to do when they do? Keep shooting until the whole prairie burns. If I have to. His voice was calm, deadly certain. Clara slammed the cup she held onto the table, the crack echoing through the room. This is my home, my family's land. You don't get to turn it into a battleground. Jesse rose unsteadily to his feet, gripping the edge of the table for balance. You think I asked for this? I didn't choose to bleed on your floor, but it happened. And now you got a choice: stand with me, or get swept under when the storm hits. Clara's lips trembled, fury and fear boiling in her chest. I never asked to stand with you. His gaze softened for just a flicker. Maybe not, but you did when you pulled that bullet out of me. That was the moment, Clara. That's when your life stopped being the same. Her throat tightened. She turned away before he could see the tears burning her eyes. Outside, a crow cawed sharp and lonely across the fields. The prairie stretched endless and cruel, but for the first time, Clara felt its smallness. There was no place to hide. By afternoon, she heard them. Hooves again, many this time, a rolling drumbeat carrying across the land. Clara froze on the porch, her hands gripping the railing till her knuckles whitened. Jesse stepped out behind her, his pistol already in his hand. A dozen riders crested the hill, dark shapes against the blazing sky. They carried rifles, dust trailing their horses like smoke. At their head rode a man with a broad chest, a scar running from jaw to neck, his hat shadowing his face. Jesse muttered low, almost to himself, Colt Avery. Clara swallowed hard. You know him. Every outlaw and hunter knows Colt. He's not in it for money. He's in it for blood. The riders slowed, spreading in a half circle around the farmhouse. The scarred man pulled his horse forward, lifting his voice. Jesse Kane. His voice carried like thunder. You're worth more to me dead than alive. But I ain't cruel. I'll give you one chance. Step out now, hands high, and I'll let the girl live. Clara's chest seized. She looked at Jesse, horror blazing in her eyes. But Jesse only smiled, sharp and bitter. Colt Avery don't let no one live. He'll gut you soon as look at you. He raised his voice, calling out across the yard. "You want me, Avery? Come and take me." The bounty hunters roared, guns rising. Clara's scream tangled in her throat as Jesse yanked her back inside. Bullets shattered the porch rail, tore splinters from the walls. Glass exploded in the windows. Clara stumbled against the table, breath ripped from her lungs. Jesse shoved her low behind the overturned bench, his gun already barking fire through the window. The house shook with violence. Bullets punched holes through wood, dust falling from the beams. Clara's ears rang with the relentless cracks, her body trembling with every thunderclap. "Stay down," Jesse snarled, reloading with lightning speed. His face was grim, his wound reopened, blood seeping fresh through his shirt. But his hands never faltered. Outside, horses screamed. Men cursed, firing wild. Jesse's shots found their marks. 2 riders toppled into the dirt. Another staggered, clutching his chest, before crumpling beneath his horse's hooves. But still they came. Clara crawled across the floor, heart hammering, searching for anything, something to help. Her fingers closed around her father's old hunting rifle propped near the door. She'd never fired at a man, but desperation left no room for innocence. Jesse's eyes flicked to her, sharp. "You know how to use that?" She swallowed hard, nodded once. Her hands shook as she braced the rifle against the window, sighting down the barrel. A rider charged close, shotgun raised. Clara's fingers squeezed, the blast nearly knocking her flat. The man tumbled backward from his saddle, gone before he hit the ground. Clara gasped, her chest heaving, smoke curling around her. Her hands trembled, but something hot and fierce surged in her veins. "Good girl," Jesse muttered, already turning to fire again. The battle raged, a storm of dust and blood. Men fell, horses screamed, bullets tore through walls and beams until the house itself seemed to bleed. Clara fired again, the recoil bruising her shoulder, but her aim truer each time. Finally, silence began to creep in, broken only by groans of the wounded outside. The riders who remained scattered, retreating over the hill, their courage broken. Clara slumped against the wall, her whole body trembling, ears still ringing. She had killed, not animals, not shadows in her nightmares, but men. The taste of it was iron on her tongue, bitter and raw. Jesse leaned heavy against the table, sweat running down his face, his shirt soaked red. He holstered his gun with a slow, weary motion, then met her gaze. "They'll be back," he said simply. Clara's voice cracked. "How many more until we're both dead?" Jesse's smile was tired, but his eyes still burned. "As many as it takes." Clara shook her head, tears spilling over. "You've damned me, Jesse Kane. Whatever I was before, you burned it away tonight." He stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm, rough and gentle all at once. "No, Clara, you just saw the truth. This world never gave you a choice. You fight, or you fall. That's all there is." Her breath broke in a sob, but she didn't pull away. Not when his eyes held hers. Not when the firelight caught the fierce line of his jaw. Somewhere in the terror, something else stirred in her. A pull she hated. A hunger she didn't ask for. The prairie outside lay littered with bodies, smoke rising against the dying sun. The farmhouse stood, scarred and battered, but still upright. And Clara knew. The storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. The house smelled of smoke, blood, and splintered wood. Clara moved through it in silence, her dress stiff with dried sweat, her hands raw from clutching the rifle. She barely felt her body anymore. It was as if she'd left herself somewhere in the middle of the gunfire, alongside the men she'd shot down. The silence after battle was worse than the noise. Every creak of the beams felt like the house groaning under the weight of ghosts. She pressed her palm against the bullet-pocked wall and tried not to think of the faces of the riders who had fallen in her yard. Jesse sat slumped in a chair by the hearth, shirt peeled back from his wound. He'd cleaned it as best he could, but the fresh bandage was already blooming red. His head was bent, his hair falling dark across his brow, but his eyes burned sharp when they lifted to hers. "You held your own," he said quietly. Clara wanted to scream at him for daring to say it like a compliment, but her throat refused the words. She just stood there, fists balled, trembling with a mix of fury and fear she couldn't untangle. "Don't," she finally whispered. "Don't make this sound like something to be proud of." Jesse leaned back, exhaling slow. "You're alive, aren't you?" Her chest tightened. "At what cost?" He didn't answer. Outside, the prairie stretched wide and empty, but Clara no longer believed in emptiness. Somewhere beyond the hills, men were nursing their wounds, whispering Jesse Kane's name like a curse. Colt Avery wasn't finished. She could feel him like a storm pressing on the horizon. That night, Clara lit no lamp. She and Jesse sat in the dark, listening to the groans of the wounded house, the occasional distant cry of a coyote. Every sound made Clara twitch. Her nails dug crescents into her palms. "Why him?" she finally asked, voice tight. "Why Colt Avery? What makes you so important he'd ride half the prairie just to see you dead?" Jesse's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low. "Colt and we rode together once. Long time back, before I figured out he wasn't just chasing money. He liked the killing. I walked away. He took it personal. Spent years telling folks I betrayed him. Now every bullet fired at me's just his way of settling that score." Clara's stomach nodded. "So this isn't just about bounty. It's personal. Everything out here's personal," Jesse said. "Blood remembers." Clara hugged herself tighter. She hated him then, hated that his past was now painted across her walls in holes and bloodstains. Hated that her life had become nothing but waiting for the next wave. And still, when she glanced at him, a different heat coiled low inside her. She hated that too. When dawn broke, Clara walked out into the yard. The bodies were still there, stiff and silent beneath the rising sun. She covered her mouth with her hand, while burning her throat. The crows had already come, black wings beating lazy circles overhead. Her hands shook as she dragged the first corpse toward the edge of the field. Jesse limped out after her, his face pale, jaw clenched against pain. "You don't have to." "Yes." She cut him off, voice sharp. "I do." One by one, they hauled the dead into a trench Clara dug with blistered hands. By the time the last rider was covered in dirt, Clara's dress clung to her with sweat and dust, her arms raw. She stood at the edge of the shallow grave, chest heaving, and for a moment she thought she might collapse in. Jesse's hand came down on her shoulder. Heavy, warm, too steady. "You don't look away from death," he murmured. "That makes you stronger than most." She jerked from his touch, tears stinging her eyes. "I don't want to be stronger. I want my life back." Jesse's gaze softened, but he said nothing, maybe because he knew there was nothing left to give her. By nightfall, Clara sat on the porch steps, staring at the horizon. The prairie was beautiful in the way fire is beautiful, something vast and untouchable, ready to consume. She didn't hear Jesse approach until he eased down beside her, moving slow, his wound stiffening his gait. "You hate me for this," he said. Not a question. Clara's jaw trembled. "You've ruined me. Don't pretend otherwise." His profile caught the fading light, sharp, worn, marked by every fight he'd ever had. He turned slightly, his voice low. "You think I don't know what I've done? Every place I set foot in ends the same. Smoke, blood, bodies left behind. I don't get to have peace, Clara. Not ever." Her throat ached. "Then why drag me into it?" "Because you pulled me back from death." His eyes locked on hers, dark and unflinching. "And because I can't walk away now. Not with Colt Avery out there. Not with you marked same as me." The words sliced something open inside her. She hated him, and she needed him. She wanted him gone, and she wanted him closer. The conflict twisted until she couldn't breathe. The air between them grew charged, heavy. For a heartbeat, she thought he might reach for her. And God help her, she might let him. But the sound of distant gunfire shattered the moment. Sharp cracks carried faintly across the prairie, too far to threaten yet, but close enough to promise they weren't alone. Clara stiffened. Jesse's hand was already on his gun, his eyes scanning the dark horizon. "They're hunting," he said grimly, "testing how close they can get before we spook." Clara's skin crawled. There would be no reprieve, no sleep, just the endless waiting, bracing, surviving. That night she lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling while Jesse paced the darkened house. The boards creaked under his boots, steady as a metronome. She listened until exhaustion dragged her into a restless sleep filled with flashes of gunfire and Jesse's shadow looming over her. When she woke near dawn, the sound was real. Hooves again, closer this time. Not a dozen like before. 2, maybe 3, circling slow. Jesse was already at the window, revolver in hand, face carved in stone. "They're probing," he muttered, "seeing if the house is still soft." Clara's heart thudded so loud she thought it might echo through the walls. She gripped the rifle and forced her shaking legs to hold her steady. The riders didn't attack. They lingered just out of clear sight, shadows on the rise, then melted back into the prairie mist. It was worse than a fight. It was a promise. Jesse lowered the curtain, jaw hard. "Colt's playing with us now. He wants us tired, scared. Makes it easier when he comes back with the rest." Clara's breath hitched. "And when will that be?" "Soon," Jesse said. "Sooner than we're ready for." The prairie was still when Clara stepped outside. So quiet it felt like the land itself was holding its breath. The air was sharp with dawn chill, her dress brushing against her legs as she scanned the horizon. Her heart knew before her eyes did. The silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. Jesse came out behind her, limping but armed, eyes hard. "He's out there." Clara didn't ask how he knew. She could feel it too. The storm was coming. By noon, dust rose in the distance. More than 2, more than 3. A line of riders darkened the horizon like thunderclouds. The sight of them turned Clara's blood to ice. "They're not testing this time," Jesse said grimly, checking the revolver at his hip. "This is it." Clara's throat tightened. Her farmhouse was no fortress, just wood and stone with holes from the last fight still gaping in its walls. She gripped her rifle so hard her knuckles whitened. The riders slowed as they neared, spreading wide in a half circle around the house. Clara counted 8, 10, 12, maybe more. And at the center, tall in the saddle, rode Colt Avery. Even from a distance, she knew him. His posture was casual, too casual, like a man certain of victory. His coat flared with the wind, his hat tipped low. The scar that split his jaw glinted when the light caught it. Jesse's breath hissed between his teeth. He came himself. The riders stopped just out of rifle range. Colt Avery raised his hand and the rest stilled. Then his voice carried across the open ground, deep and cutting. "Jesse Kane, you should have stayed in the ground last time I left you bleeding. Thought you could crawl off and hide? Now you've dragged this poor farm girl into your mess." Clara stiffened, heat flashing through her. "Farm girl." The dismissiveness in his tone stung worse than fear. She lifted her rifle, aiming at Colt's chest. Jesse's hand clamped down on her barrel before she could squeeze the trigger. "Not yet," he muttered. Colt laughed, the sound sharp as a whip. "How about this? You walk out now, Kane, and maybe I let the lady keep her pretty little home. Otherwise, we burn it down with you inside." Jesse stepped forward, shoulders squared. His voice rang clear. "You always were a coward hiding behind numbers. Colt, you want me? Come take me yourself." Colt's grin spread slow. "Oh, I intend to." The riders surged. Gunfire cracked, a dozen shots tearing into the house as Jesse yanked Clara back inside. Wood splintered, glass shattered, and the world became noise. Clara's body moved before thought. She fired from the window, one rider tumbling from his horse with a scream. She ducked as bullets shredded the wall where her head had been. Her lungs burned, her ears rang, and still she kept firing. Jesse moved like a shadow at her side, fast, brutal, precise. Every time Clara faltered, his hand steadied her. His voice barked orders. "Left window. Reload now. Keep low." The house shook with the storm. The table splintered under stray bullets. Dishes exploded into shards. The very walls seemed to bleed dust. Clara's muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. Every shot was survival. Every pull of the trigger was defiance. Through the chaos, she glimpsed Colt Avery riding closer, his revolver flashing, his eyes locked on the house. Then came fire. One rider lobbed a burning bottle through a shattered window, flames erupting across the floorboards. Clara coughed. Eyes stinging as smoke filled the room. She grabbed a bucket, dousing the blaze with trembling arms. But more fire came. "They're gonna torch us out," she choked. Jesse's face was grim. "Then we fight our way out." Bullets whined past as they forced open the back door, Jesse covering her with relentless fire. Clara stumbled into the yard, her heart pounding so hard it drowned the roar of battle. Horses screamed. Men shouted. The sky above swirled with smoke. A rider charged straight at her. Clara raised her rifle. Too slow. Jesse's shot dropped him before he reached her. Blood sprayed across the grass. Clara's stomach lurched, but she forced herself forward. The battle tore across her land like a nightmare. She lost count of how many men fell. Jesse moved with lethal fury, every motion driven by years of survival. But he was bleeding again, his side dark with fresh crimson, his steps faltering. Colt Avery cut through the chaos like a predator, gunning down his own fallen without hesitation. His eyes found Clara, and his grin widened. "You've got fire in you, girl," he called, voice slicing through the din, "but it won't save him. Won't save you either." He dismounted in one smooth motion, revolver drawn, and stalked toward them. Jesse staggered to meet him, revolver raised, but Colt's first shot sent it spinning from his hand. Clara screamed, lifting her rifle. Colt fired, the bullet grazing her arm and tearing through fabric. Pain seared hot, but she held her ground. Colt leveled his gun at Jesse's chest. "End of the trail, Kane." Clara didn't think. She just moved. Charging forward, she slammed into Colt with all the strength her fury could muster. The gun fired wild, the bullet slamming into the dirt as they both went down hard. Colt snarled, his hand at her throat, squeezing. Clara clawed and kicked, stars bursting in her vision. She could hear Jesse shouting, hear the struggle as he fought to rise. But Colt's grip crushed the air from her. Her hand fumbled across the dirt, closing around a jagged shard of broken wood. With the last of her strength, she drove it into Colt's neck. His eyes went wide, blood gurgling at his lips. His grip loosened. Clara shoved with everything left inside her, rolling free as Colt staggered, clutching the wound. Jesse's shot rang out a breath later, the bullet slamming into Colt's chest. He fell to his knees, then forward, the earth swallowing him in silence. The battlefield stilled. The last of Colt's men, seeing their leader dead, turned tail and rode hard into the horizon. Smoke drifted, the cries of the wounded fading to nothing. Clara lay gasping in the dirt, her throat burning, her arm bleeding. Jesse collapsed beside her, his body trembling, blood soaking his shirt. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the prairie wind moved. Finally, Jesse's voice rasped, weak but steady. "You finished it." Clara turned her head toward him, tears streaking her soot-stained face. "No," she whispered. "We did." His hand found hers, rough and warm, gripping tight even as his strength faded. She held on, terrified of what it meant to let go. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in red and gold. Around them, Clara's farm lay broken, walls burned, fields trampled, blood staining the earth. Yet in the wreckage, something unyielding burned inside her. She had killed. She had bled. She had survived. The woman who once feared shadows on the horizon was gone. What remained was harder, sharper. Jesse's eyes fluttered shut, his breath ragged. Panic surged in Clara's chest. She pressed her hands to his wound, desperate, whispering, "Stay with me. Damn you." His eyes opened again, just barely, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Didn't figure. You for someone who'd beg." "Shut up," she choked, tears falling. "You don't get to leave me now." He squeezed her hand once, weak but certain. "Then I won't." And with the prairie burning in twilight around them, Clara knew her life would never return to what it had been. But it would go on. With Jesse, or without him, it would go on. Because she was no longer just surviving. She was fighting. And that is how Clara and Jesse's tale was carved into the dust of the frontier. A story of love born from danger, of fire forged in shadows. Some say their names faded with time, buried beneath the soil of that farm and the whispers of the Outlaw Trail. But if you listen close, when the wind cuts across the prairie, you can still hear it, the vow he made, and the promise she kept.